My own daughter
Go
kicked me
on,
out of
get
the
out!
house and said, looking me in the eye, "Find another place to die, old woman." But I never would have imagined that 3 days later, I'd be in a law firm uncovering my late husband's biggest secret and discovering that he'd already anticipated our daughter's greed and had set a trap for her. My life turned upside down, and Esmeralda discovered that sometimes even the most insignificant pawn can become a queen. But before continuing, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and leave a comment in the comments. Where are you watching from? We love to hear how far our stories are reaching. 2 months ago, I was just Luz Elena Rivera, a recently widowed and devoted mother. For 43 years, I was Roberto's perfect wife, taking care of the house, raising our daughter Esmeralda, and supporting him every step of the way. When Roberto died of a heart attack at 71, I felt like my world had ended. I had lost not only my partner, but also my identity. Who was I now without him? Esmeralda appeared during my mourning like a vulture disguised in designer clothes. At first, her visits seemed motivated by genuine concern. She would hold my hands in her perfectly manicured ones and say in a sweet voice, "Mom, you can't manage this huge house alone. The stairs, the maintenance, all these memories, it's not healthy." I should have realized it then. I should have noticed the greed hidden behind those eyes identical to her father's. But the pain of mourning blinded me to what was happening right in front of me. Roberto always spoiled Esmeralda. She was his little princess who could never do anything wrong. When she married Fernando, that investment banker, with an easy smile and calculating eyes, Roberto showered them with expensive gifts. When the grandchildren arrived, he spoiled them with toys, trips, and even college funds. Meanwhile, I was just the woman behind the scenes cooking Sunday dinners, organizing birthday parties, making everything run smoothly without ever receiving credit. After the funeral, Esmeralda became increasingly insistent about my situation. Family dinners turned into ambushes with her and Fernando cornering me with brochures for senior living communities and real estate agencies. "Mom, these places are wonderful," she would say as she showed me pictures of tiny apartments in senior living complexes. "You'd have people your age, organized activities, no responsibilities." What they really meant was no inheritance to divide, no inconvenient mother to take care of. But I smiled and said thanks, pushing the brochures aside like the complacent mother I'd always been. The final blow came on a rainy Tuesday 6 weeks after Roberto's death. I was still living in what Esmeralda already called our house, sleeping in the guest room, because I couldn't clean our marital bedroom. The memories were still too painful. Esmeralda arrived unannounced with Fernando right behind her, carrying 2 enormous suitcases. The gleam in her eyes chilled me to the bone. "Mom, we've made a decision. Fernando got a promotion, and we need to move to the city right away. This house is perfect for us." I looked at her, not fully understanding. "Move, but this is my house." It was at that moment that Esmeralda's mask slipped, revealing the calculating coldness beneath the veneer of a concerned daughter. "Actually, Mom, according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the investments, everything. I was letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time you found your own place." The words hit me like a physical blow. The air left my lungs as I tried to process what I was hearing. "Esmeralda, there must have been a mistake." "No mistake, Mom. Dad knew I would take better care of his legacy than you could. You never understood money or investments. You were just the wife." Just the wife. 43 years of marriage boiled down to those 3 sharp words. It was then that she struck the fatal blow. Words that would be seared into my soul like red-hot iron. "Find somewhere else to die. You're no good anymore." I packed my things in a stupor. 43 years of memories fit into 2 suitcases and a small box of photographs. Esmeralda watched from the doorway, occasionally glancing at her watch, as if I were delaying something important. "There's a nice senior living complex on Cactus Street," she offered, with the enthusiasm of someone recommending an average restaurant. "Very affordable. I'm sure they have openings." Affordable. My daughter was inheriting $33 million and suggested I go to what was essentially a charity for the elderly. Fernando carried my bags to his gleaming BMW with the efficiency of someone disposing of garbage. "Luz Helena, you'll love having your independence back," he said without looking me in the eye. "No more worrying about house maintenance or property taxes." What he meant was, no more owning a house. As we drove away, I watched my house, Roberto's house now, Esmeralda's house, disappear in the rearview mirror. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent 4 decades making that house a home, hosting birthday parties for Esmeralda, caring for Roberto during his illness, maintaining every detail he took pride in. Now, I was being whisked away to a cheap motel like an unwanted guest who had overstayed her welcome. The Sunset Hotel was exactly what you'd expect from a place that charged $49 a night. Thin walls, even thinner towels, and a carpet that had seen decades of better quality. I sat on the edge of the sunken mattress, the noise of the antique air conditioner masking my sobs. Esmeralda handed me $200 in cash, as if I were tipping a hotel maid. "This should cover you for a few days while you get settled," she said. "I'll ask Fernando to transfer some money to your account as soon as we get Dad's papers sorted." Some money from my own inheritance, as if it were charity. As they walked out, I noticed the way Fernando placed his hand on Esmeralda's back. Possessive, triumphant. In a few hours, I'd gone from a grieving widow to a homeless old woman. I'd discarded the woman I'd raised, loved, and sacrificed for like an expired prescription. But as I sat in that dreary motel room, something started to bother me. Roberto was always meticulous about his affairs, obsessively organized with important documents. He'd shown me his will years ago, explaining his wishes, making sure I understood everything, and I was absolutely certain it wasn't what Esmeralda had said. Roberto had been many things, traditional sometimes, stubborn, occasionally condescending about money matters, but he wasn't cruel. The man who held my hand during my mother's death, who surprised me with flowers on every anniversary, wouldn't have left me destitute. I lay awake at night, replaying every conversation I'd had with Roberto about our future. Something didn't add up. The next morning, I used the motel's Wi-Fi to find Roberto's lawyer, Miguel Santos, the same lawyer who had handled our house purchase and various business matters over the years. His office was in downtown Mexico City, a 20-minute bus ride away, which cost me precious money, but seemed necessary. My hands were shaking as I entered the elegant office building. Part of me was afraid to confirm that Roberto had really left me with nothing. Miguel Santos was a distinguished man in his 70s, with kind eyes behind thin-framed glasses. When his secretary announced that Mrs. Rivera was there to discuss her husband's property, he seemed genuinely surprised. "Luz Helena, my dear, I was wondering when you were coming. I tried calling your house several times, but Esmeralda told me you were traveling." "Traveling?" That's what my daughter told him. "Mr. Santos, I need to ask about Roberto's will." He seemed confused. "Of course. Didn't Esmeralda give you your copy?" I gave her the original and several copies after the reading. My stomach turned. "Was there a reading?" "Luz Helena, you should have been there. Esmeralda said you were very upset that she would take care of everything and make sure you received your inheritance." The blood drained from my face as reality hit me. "Mr. Santos, I was never informed about any readings. Esmeralda told me she inherited everything." Miguel Santos's expression changed from confusion to alarm. He picked up a thick folder, his movements suddenly urgent. "Luz Helena, this is impossible. Your husband's will is very specific about your inheritance. He picked up a document. I recognized Roberto's careful signature at the bottom, witnessed and authenticated. When Miguel began to read, I realized Esmeralda had lied about everything. I, Roberto Rivera, of sound mind and body, hereby leave to my beloved wife, Luz Helena Rivera, the following our principal residence at 847 Montezuma Street, including all furniture and personal belongings. I also leave her 70% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts totaling approximately $23 million. My head began to spin. $23 million. The house. 70% of everything. Miguel continued reading, his voice becoming more serious. To my daughter, Esmeralda Rivera Hayes, I leave $10 million to be held in escrow with distributions beginning on her 45th birthday, conditioned on her treatment of her mother after my death. Conditional on her treatment of me. Roberto knew it. Somehow, he knew exactly what Esmeralda would try to do. Mr. Santos, I whispered, barely able to form the words. Esmeralda told me I didn't inherit anything. She kicked me out of my house, gave me $200, and suggested I find a nursing home. The elderly lawyer's face turned red with anger. Luz Helena, what Esmeralda did is called elder abuse and fraud. She's committed several serious crimes. But she had legal documents. She showed me papers probably forged, or documents from an earlier draft. Your husband updated the will 6 months before his death, specifically because he was concerned about Esmeralda's attitude toward money and her sense of entitlement. The room seemed to revolve around me. All those times Esmeralda had disregarded my opinions interrupted me during family dinners. She'd rolled her eyes when he tried to contribute to conversations about her expensive vacations or Fernando's business dealings. Roberto was watching, evaluating, making decisions. There's more, Luz Helena. The custody clause for Esmeralda specifically states that if she fails to treat you with respect and dignity after my death, the full $10 million reverts to you. I looked at him in absolute shock. He's saying, I'm saying your daughter just cost herself $10 million. His inheritance is now yours too. You're not inheriting $23 million, Luz Helena. You're inheriting $33 million plus the house and all his personal belongings. The irony was so perfect, it almost made me laugh through my tears. Esmeralda was so eager to claim her inheritance that she triggered the exact clause designed to protect me from her greed. Roberto, my shrewd and far-sighted Roberto, had anticipated all of this. What do I do now? I asked, my voice barely steady. Miguel smiled, and for the first time since Roberto's death, I saw genuine warmth directed at me. Now, my dear, we call the police about the fraud, and then we call Esmeralda and inform her that she's about to get the shock of her life. Can she fight this? With what money? Miguel laughed, his eyes shining with righteous satisfaction. She's about to discover that every account she thought she controlled actually belongs to you. Every investment, every bank account, every asset is frozen, pending an investigation into his fraudulent activities. I thought of Esmeralda in my house, probably already planning renovations, buying new furniture with money she thought was hers. Fernando was probably calculating how the inheritance would affect his investment portfolio. They had no idea that in just a few hours, their entire world was about to implode. Miguel Santos's law firm became the command center for what he cheerfully called Operation Justice. He contacted the police banks and a private investigator while I sat in his leather chair, still processing the magnitude of Esmeralda's disappointment. The forged documents are quite sophisticated, Detective Maria Rodriguez explained as she reviewed the fake will Esmeralda had shown me. This wasn't an improvised crime. Someone carefully planned it. Do you think Esmeralda had help? I asked. Almost certainly. Creating convincing legal forgeries requires specific knowledge. We need to investigate whether Fernando or someone in his financial network was involved. In just 2 hours, all the accounts were frozen. Esmeralda's credit cards linked to what she thought were her new inheritance accounts were declined. The utility bills for the house, which she had already transferred to her name, were suspended pending verification of ownership. My phone rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. Esmeralda's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath before answering. "Mom, where are you? There's some kind of mix-up with the bank accounts. They're saying Dad's assets are frozen." "Hello, Esmeralda. I'm sitting in Miguel Santos's office. Do you remember him, Dad's lawyer, the one who read the real will in an empty room while you told him I was traveling?" Absolute silence on the other end of the line. Then her voice trembled slightly. "Mom, I don't know what you think you discovered, but what I discovered, darling, is that you're a liar and a thief. And I also discovered that your father was far more cunning than any of us realized. You don't understand. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing all that money. You've never had to deal with investments, or I understand perfectly. You falsified legal documents, committed fraud, and kicked your 67-year-old mother out of her own home because you thought I was too stupid to realize it." Her voice became high-pitched, desperate. "Mom, you're confused. The grief has been overwhelming and someone is obviously taking advantage of your emotional state." The audacity was astounding. Even caught red-handed, Esmeralda was trying to manipulate me to spin the situation, to make me doubt my own sanity. "Esmeralda, my dear, let me make something clear. Not only did you never inherit anything but your real inheritance, the 10 million your father left you is now mine too, thanks to a lovely clause he included about treating me with dignity and respect. That's impossible. Detective Rodriguez is sitting right here if you want to discuss the impossibility of the fraud allegations with her." The phone fell silent. I could almost hear Esmeralda's mind racing, calculating, searching for a way out. "Mom, please can we meet somewhere and talk this over reasonably? I'm sure we can work something out." "Oh, we'll definitely meet again soon in court when you're charged. You wouldn't dare sue your own daughter." Something cold and final crystallized in my chest. "Look at me." I hung up and looked at Miguel, who was beaming with approval. "How long until they arrest her?" "Detective Rodriguez has enough evidence for a warrant. They'll catch her tonight." Police arrested Esmeralda at 8:30 p.m. while she was dining at the famous La Esperanza restaurant, apparently celebrating her inheritance with Fernando and another couple. According to Detective Rodriguez, she yelled about an unjust arrest and demanded to call her lawyer, who happened to be Fernando's friend from golf and had no experience in criminal law. Fernando was arrested at his office the next morning. The accounting expert had traced the falsified documents to a printing press that Fernando's company used to create investment prospectuses. Apparently, my son-in-law had a criminal record that Esmeralda either didn't know about or chose to ignore. I returned home that night. My real house. Esmeralda had already moved her belongings into the master bedroom, replacing Roberto's careful organization with the chaos of her designer clothes and expensive cosmetics. I packed everything in garbage bags and left them on the front porch, to pick them up when he got out on bail. I thought the story was over. Esmeralda and Fernando were facing criminal charges. I had my house, back my inheritance secured, and a sense of justice that stirred inside me. But the universe had another twist in store for me. The doorbell rang 3 days later. Estela Hayes, Fernando's mother, stood at my door, perfectly coiffed, dripping with jewels, and radiating the kind of privilege that only comes from 3 generations of inherited wealth. "Lucelina, we need to discuss this situation rationally." I invited her in, curious to see what version of reality the Hayes family had constructed to explain the criminal accusations against their son. Estela settled into my living room as if she were granting me a royal audience. "Fernando made some bad decisions, obviously. But suing him seems pretty vindictive, don't you think? Vindictive. His son helped steal my inheritance and threw me out of my own house. Fernando was following Esmeralda's example. He didn't understand the whole situation. The woman was in fact trying to blame my daughter for her son's criminal behavior. I had to admire her audacity. Ms. Hayes Fernando created falsified legal documents. That's not following someone's lead, that's conspiracy to commit fraud. Fernando's lawyer believes we can reach a mutually beneficial agreement. You get your house back, Esmeralda faces appropriate consequences, and Fernando avoids the publicity of a trial. What kind of agreement? Estela smiled, clearly believing she'd found an opening. Fernando's family is prepared to compensate you for your inconvenience. Let's say $2 million in exchange for dropping the charges against him. $2 million to pardon the man who helped steal $33 million from me. The audacity was almost admirable. Mrs. Hayes, your son, participated in a scheme that cost me everything I had. Do you think $2 million covers that loose Helena? Be realistic? Fernando has a career, children, and a reputation to uphold. Sending him to prison serves no one. It serves justice. Estela's polished facade cracked slightly. Justice? You're destroying several families for money you'd never have known how to handle anyway. There it was. The same condescending attitude that had poisoned my relationship with Esmeralda. In her world, I was just the employee who had risen above her station. Mrs. Hayes, I think we're done here. Luz Helena, please reconsider. $5 million final offer. $5 million to let Fernando walk free. The amount was impressive, but the principle was non-negotiable. My answer is no. Estela stood up, her composure completely restored. Very well. But you should know that Fernando's legal team discovered some interesting information about your husband's business practices. It would be unfortunate if that became public during the trial. The threat was clear, but I wasn't afraid, just curious. What kind of information? The kind that can make you reconsider who the real criminal was in this situation. After she left, I called Miguel immediately. If Estela was lying, I needed to know. If not, I needed to prepare myself. That's how I discovered the most shocking secret of all. The private investigator Miguel recommended was a sharp-eyed woman named Leah Gonzalez, who specialized in financial crimes. She spent 6 hours in Roberto's office photographing documents and constructing what she called a true picture of my husband's business empire. Mrs. Rivera said in a serious voice her husband was operating a sophisticated money laundering operation through his consulting firm. We're talking millions of dollars in illegal transactions over the last decade. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. Roberto was the most honest man I knew. I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. He was laundering money for organized crime families, using his legitimate business as a front. I looked at the documents scattered on Roberto's table. Invoices for services never rendered. Consulting contracts with companies that didn't exist. Payment schedules that coincided with known criminal activity. How long has this been going on? Based on these records, at least 12 years, probably more. 12 years. While I was planning dinners and attending charity galas, my husband was facilitating criminal enterprises. Ms. Rivera, there's more. The $10 million Roberto left Esmeralda came directly from laundered funds. If the FBI finds out about this, they'll seize everything as proceeds of criminal activity. The room began to spin. Everything, the house, the investments could be confiscated. Decades of my life would disappear in the blink of an eye. Unless... Leah looked uncomfortable. Unless what? Unless Esmeralda and Fernando's legal team already knows this and is planning to use it as leverage. If they inform the FBI about her husband's crimes, they may be able to negotiate immunity in exchange for cooperation. My daughter and her husband weren't just thieves. They were holding a nuclear weapon over my head. When my phone rang that night, I wasn't surprised to see Esmeralda's number. Mom, we need to meet tonight. There are things you need to know about Dad that change everything. I know, Esmeralda. Silence. You know what I know about money laundering. I know about criminal connections. I know everything your father left us is tainted. Mom, listen to me carefully. Fernando's lawyers have been in contact with the FBI. They're willing to let us renegotiate our situation. What kind of renegotiation? Fernando receives immunity in exchange for providing information about Dad's criminal network? You can keep $5 million and the house. The rest goes to the government. And you two? The fraud charges are gone. We're all out of this mess. She was brilliant in a sociopathic way. Esmeralda had turned my moral victory into her strategic advantage. Esmeralda, you're asking me to help you profit from your crimes by exploiting Dad's crimes. I'm asking you to be practical. The alternative is losing everything and potentially facing charges yourself. I looked around Roberto's office, seeing him clearly for the first time. The expensive furniture, the rare books, the art collection, all bought with dirty money. My whole life had been built on lies. I need time to think. Mom, the meeting with the FBI is tomorrow morning. Fernando's lawyer needs an answer tonight. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of Roberto's office, surrounded by evidence of his double life. 43 years of marriage to a stranger, a daughter who inherited more than money from her father. She inherited his talent for deception, but she made a crucial mistake. She underestimated who I was when I was cornered. I picked up the phone and dialed Leah Gonzalez. Leah, how quickly can you get me a meeting with the FBI? I have a story to tell you, and I think you'll find it very interesting. FBI agent Sarah Martinez was a serious, intelligent woman completely immune to charm. She sat across from me in Miguel's conference room, recording our conversation and taking notes with mechanical precision. Ms. Rivera, do you understand that by coming forward voluntarily, you are potentially admitting to benefiting from criminal proceeds? I understand that. But I'd rather tell you the truth than let my daughter and her husband manipulate this situation to their advantage. I revealed everything. Roberto's hidden business, Esmeralda's fraud scheme, Fernando's forgeries, and the extortion attempt disguised as a settlement offer. 3 hours later, I was sitting in my living room with a recording device strapped to my chest, waiting for Esmeralda and Fernando to arrive for what they thought was a surrender meeting. There was a knock on the door at exactly 8 p.m., both dressed as if they were going to a business dinner. Fernando was carrying a briefcase that probably contained immunity agreements and settlement papers. Mom, you look better than you have in weeks, Esmeralda said, kissing my cheek as if nothing had happened. I feel better. Clarity has that effect. Fernando opened his briefcase with the efficiency of someone who had conducted similar negotiations before. Lucelina, our lawyers structured this very favorably for you. You retain the house, $5 million in clean assets, and complete immunity from any charges related to Roberto's activities. Clean assets. That's an interesting phrase. So. Esmeralda shot Fernando a warning look. Mom, the important thing is that we're all protected. The past is buried, and we all move on. And the $33 million that Roberto really left me? Mom, that money is tainted. It can't be separated from Dad's criminal activities. Taking $5 million is the best possible outcome. And you two, what do you gain from this agreement? Fernando leaned forward, his confidence returning. We managed to put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us. Esmeralda's charges are dropped, my reputation remains intact, and our family can heal. Misunderstanding? He was still calling fraud a misunderstanding. Fernando, helped me understand something. When exactly did you discover Roberto's criminal activities? What do you mean? Did you know about the money laundering when you married Esmeralda? Or did you discover it recently when you were planning to steal my inheritance? Fernando and Esmeralda exchanged glances. Lucelina, I don't think that's relevant to our current discussion. Actually, I think it's very relevant because if you knew about Roberto's crimes and didn't say anything that makes you an accomplice. And if you only discovered them while committing your own crimes, that makes you remarkably unlucky. Esmeralda's composure was beginning to crack. Mom, what are you getting at? I want to get at the fact that you two have been planning this for months, possibly years. The forged will the discovery of money laundering, even Fernando's connections to document forgers. None of this was spontaneous. This is ridiculous. Is it Agent Martinez finds it quite plausible? The color drained from both of their faces. Agent Martinez, Fernando whispered. FBI, Agent Martinez and 2 other federal agents entered my living room like actors waiting for their cue. Esmeralda and Fernando sat motionless like pillars of salt. The briefcase Fernando was about to grab was immediately confiscated, along with both of their phones. Esmeralda Hayes and Fernando Hayes are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and attempted extortion of a federal witness. Esmeralda turned to me with an expression of utter betrayal. Mom, how could you do this to your own family? The same way you could forge legal documents and steal my inheritance, my dear, only my way is legal. As the officers handcuffed them, Fernando attempted one last desperate move. Luz Helena, you don't understand what you did. There are people connected to Roberto's businesses who won't appreciate federal attention. You put yourself in danger. Officer Martinez stopped reading him his rights. Sir, is Hayes threatening a federal witness? I'm warning you about the reality of your situation. The reality, Officer Martinez said, is that you just added witness intimidation to your charges. After they were led away, Officer Martinez sat back down across from me. Ms. Rivera, Fernando's warning may not be entirely empty. Her husband was connected to some dangerous people. How dangerous? The Torino crime family mainly. They've been using legitimate businesses to launder money for decades. Her husband's consulting firm was one of their most successful operations. The name meant nothing to me, but the agent's expression told me everything I needed to know. Are you saying I'm in real physical danger? Potentially, but there's something else you should know about your husband's operation. Something that changes everything. Agent Martinez picked up a thick folder of the kind that suggested months of investigation. Mrs. Rivera, your husband wasn't just laundering money for the Torino family. He was an FBI informant. For 12 years, he provided information about their operations while seemingly facilitating their money laundering. The world tilted it sideways. Roberto was working undercover for the FBI on a long-term investigation. The operation was so sensitive that not even the local FBI offices were informed. Her husband was helping us build cases against several crime families. But the money was real. The FBI allowed him to keep a percentage of the laundered funds as payment for his cooperation and to maintain his cover. Everything he left her was earned through legitimate federal cooperation. I looked at her, trying to process this revelation. So, the $33 million is legally mine. Her husband died before the investigation was completed, but her cooperation over 12 years directly led to 47 arrests and the seizure of more than $200 million in criminal assets. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because the investigation was ongoing, and because we weren't sure about her involvement or knowledge. Her daughter and son-in-law's fraud scheme actually helped us confirm her innocence. Esmeralda and Fernando knew nothing about this. They suspected criminal activity, but had no idea about federal cooperation. They were planning to blackmail me with information that in fact would have cleared my husband. The irony was so perfect, it was almost poetic. Agent Martinez. What happens now? Now you get your money back, your daughter and son-in-law face federal charges, and you decide what kind of life you want to build with your rightful inheritance. And the danger Fernando mentioned, the Torino family will be too busy dealing with their own legal problems to worry about you. We're executing search warrants in 3 states tomorrow morning. 6 months later, I sat in the kitchen of my completely renovated home, making coffee for a meeting with my financial advisor. The morning sun streamed in through new windows I'd chosen myself, illuminating countertops that reflected my personal style for the first time in 43 years. Esmeralda and Fernando were serving 18 months in a minimum security federal prison. The media coverage of their crimes made me something of a celebrity in elder protection circles, and I was now running the Luz Elena Rivera Foundation for the protection of elderly persons, using $15 million of my inheritance to fund legal assistance for elderly victims of family financial abuse. The documentary was confirmed by Netflix, said Sarah Gonzalez, my financial advisor, as we reviewed the foundation's paperwork. They want to start filming next month. And Esmeralda. Any news, he wrote again. His lawyer says he wants to apologize and ask for forgiveness. Esmeralda wrote me 17 letters from prison. I read the first ones, which ranged from self-justifying to desperate, before deciding to stop opening them. Some relationships once broken cannot be repaired with words. Sarah schedules a meeting with Esmeralda's lawyer, not to reconcile, but to set the record straight. What kind of thing? I want Esmeralda to understand that her actions had consequences beyond legal punishment. I want her to know she permanently destroyed our relationship and that her children will grow up knowing why their mother went to jail. That sounds harsh. It's meant to be harsh. Esmeralda made adult decisions that hurt people she was supposed to love. He can't escape the emotional consequences just because he wrote a few letters from prison. I looked out the window at the garden I had completely replanted. Red roses replaced the bushes Roberto always insisted on maintaining. A small stone fountain, something I'd always wanted, bubbled in the sun. Luz Elena, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Did you ever regret how this all played out? The prison sentences, the media attention, the permanent family rupture? I considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, I was invisible, a widow with no money, no home, and no prospects. Today, I was a millionaire philanthropist with a foundation, a documentary film deal, and a purpose that extended far beyond my own survival. Sarah, my daughter, tried to steal everything I had and leave me homeless. My son-in-law created forged documents and threatened me with blackmail. They showed me exactly who they were when they thought I was powerless to stop them. But they're still family. No, they're still DNA. Families are the people who protect you when you're vulnerable, not the people who exploit your vulnerability for profit. I looked at the art studio that now housed Roberto's old office. My latest painting, a self-portrait, was drying on the easel. A woman with a straight-back gray hair blowing in the wind, her face turned toward the sun. This woman looked nothing like the broken widow who had packed her life into 2 suitcases 6 months earlier. Besides, I added with a smile, look what I became when I stopped letting them define my worth. The sun was setting behind trees I planted myself on soil that was rightfully mine, on a life I had defended with intelligence and courage. Tomorrow, I would continue building the legacy I chose for myself, not the one others tried to impose on me. And if Esmeralda ever truly wanted to reconcile, she would have to bring much more than prison letters and empty excuses. She would have to bring a complete transformation that matched my own. Now, if you enjoyed this story, click on this next video that appears on the screen because it contains a tale of betrayal and twist like you've never seen before.